and welcome to the Lavender Press. We are a trans liberation org dedicated to exposing the journalistic malpractice of the mainstream press. Here today with Demi Minor, who is a transgender inmate in a youth correctional facility. Thank you for joining me, Demi.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Of course. Before we get into the details of your story, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit better. The first question that I wanted to ask you is, at what age did you realize that you were transgender?
About 8 years old, I had like my own episodes of, I want to call it incongruency, where I just felt as though I didn't fit in. But I always have viewed myself more so as like non-binary because I feel like I didn't have like a choice growing up with a dad who was homophobic, transphobic. So I just viewed myself as someone who didn't have a gender. And then about the age 16, I began socially identifying again, and about at the age 20, I want to say 25, um, I began taking hormones, and well, at the age of 14, I was already taking illegal hormones, but at the age of 24, I was finally prescribed legal hormones.
So you were on hormones then. What about now in prison? Are they letting you take hormones?
Yeah, so in 2019, I went back on hormones. Well, I had to go out to a specialist due to me being a diabetic. I went back on hormones, and I've been on hormones ever since with like a testosterone of like 10 and an estrogen of like 300, so well within the appropriate ranges.
That's great. You mentioned a father. I understand that you were uh, in the foster care system. Is that right?
Yeah, so about at the age of 9, I ended up in the foster care system because of my dad started beating me. Sometimes he would see me with my hand on my hip or various feminine expressions that he noticed or picked up on, and he would give me beatings because of them. One of the beatings got so severe that I went to school one day and couldn't sit down, and my teacher ended up reporting it, and I ended up in the foster care system for about several years where I suffered various forms of like sexual abuse, physical abuse, and psychological abuse.
That's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, so on your website where you tell your story, justicefordemi.org, there's this phrase that gets used, the foster to prison pipeline. Can you explain what that means?
So the foster prison pipeline is something I felt like I picked up on when I ended up in the system. When I ended up in the prison system, I was 16 years old, and I began seeing a lot of youth and kids that I was once in foster care with, and in these programs with. So I had no like really way to like refer to it, and then I called it a cycle, and then I called it the foster care prison pipeline, being the fact that without appropriate services and mental health services as well, most of the kids who are in foster care are just primed and prepped for the prison pipeline, or to be sent to adult prisons.
All right, thank you for answering. So your story has been publicized in the mainstream press a couple of times, and they keep making this implication. They keep saying that you were transferred out of the women's prison because you got another prisoner pregnant. Is that accurate?
Yes, although the DOC declines to refer to it as that, and they say it's more so for my safety, I truly believe that it was due to the pregnancies, which occurred back in I think April 2022, which is a couple months ago. The department learned that two inmates were pregnant. One inmate subsequently ended up being pregnant. That I know that was with my child from a consensual relationship, and the department, moved pretty secretively and pretty fast to get me out of a prison that was house congruent with my gender identity. I felt as though the transfer had no regard for my safety, but yes, I do feel as though that it had to do with the with regards to the pregnancies.
In our correspondence before the call, you mentioned something like the Department of Corrections had insisted that they no longer believed that you were transgender. Is that correct as well?
Yes. So the Department of Corrections is pretty like the Department of Corrections has forgotten about Stonewall, has forgotten about numerous transgender movements, and they want transgenders to fit into this one category, which as a transgender woman I refuse to fit into. But they want a person to basically either castrate or mutilate themselves, or they want a person to only be attracted to males. And if you fall in love with a female inmate, then you're not transgender. If you are engaged in a consensual relationship with a female, then you're not transgender. Unfortunately, none of those things have to do. I mean, well, fortunately, none of those things have to do with someone's gender identity. So the department continues to make those type of, we'll call them. They make decisions based off of that poor ideology. But the truth is, I'm approved for surgery, gender affirming surgeries. I've taken all my hormones. I've maintained a hormone level that's within the recommended ranges. And, despite this one charge that I caught in my 2 years of being housed at Edna Man Correctional Facility, I was pretty much a well-behaved inmate.
Got it. Um, so you mentioned this consensual relationship that you had with another inmate. I had a chance to speak to them, and she verified that. Um, did the Department of Corrections acknowledge that it was consensual?
So that was the first thing that happened. Is on, I think, April 8th, the Department of Corrections, Dan Spraza, announced that it was a consensual relationship. But what I believe is that any transgender, I believe that the department is kind of suggesting that anyone who's transgender and a transgender female and who engages in a relationship with somebody who may be a biological woman, they deem it to be rape. And that's inappropriate. Even for PREA standards, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, it decries that type of practice because inmates do engage in relationships, and some of them are consensual, and the ones who are not consensual are prosecuted under the law. But having an ideology that transgenders who engage in these relationships with these with cisgender women are predators, it kind of puts us in a situation where now we're placed in situations where I'm at, which is housed in a mental facility, and an unsafe situation where I'm constantly having to fear for my safety of being beat up, assaulted, or raped. Um, or just
Hmm.
like what's happened recently, which was on Friday, I was sent out to the emergency room because of some mental health breakdown, which resulted in some physical issues.
I see. I'm sorry to hear that. So another thing I wanted to ask about, um, people that have never been to prison, like myself, the only sort of media we have to get a sense for what life in prison is like tends to come out of Hollywood. And so a lot of
Yeah,
people have a
yeah.
sense that there's just sort of constant violence between inmates. And I think that's why people are so quick to assume that there couldn't have been a consensual relationship. I wanted to know, um, what is your relationship like with the rest of the inmates?
So when I arrived there in about 2020, um, a lot of inmates didn't want us there. Because they felt as though that we were going to be these dangerous, violent men. And the truth is, I became a unit representative and an inmate paralegal, and I built a lot of friendships while I was there, and I had a lot of people who actually supported me. However, that doesn't, take away from the people who were also there who hated the fact that somebody who didn't undergo a surgery was housed in Edna Man Correctional Facility. And I like to think that people like that who are transphobic are not a reflection of the entire population at the Mahan Correctional Facility. So, I mean, I made a lot of friends, and I ended up making a friend who accepted me as being a transgender woman, which all my life dealing with rejection and having to hide and lie to people, I finally felt comfortable living as who I wanted to be and then being accepted by this person who decided to accept me as that. But again, I did have an altercation like with it was crazy because another transgender inmate who decided to sue and try to say that no inmate who did not undergo a surgery such as they did not belong there. So,
Wow.
but other than that, I had, and this is what we call in the community internalized transphobia. But the truth of the matter is, your surgical status or your hormone status is not what makes you transgender. It's your
Absolutely.
internal sense of feeling. It's the a lot of people within the community cannot afford those surgeries or afford those medications. So again,
Absolutely.
in New Jersey Department of Corrections has never given somebody that surgery as of today as we have this interview. So a lot of people there don't respect me and they like me, but at the same time, when this situation happened, a lot of people did begin to be transphobic, and a lot of people did begin to be judgmental. I believe even some inmates have been under the impression that they can file false complaints and kind of gain money off of this by saying like, "Oh, DOC got me hurt by somebody," which I never ever have engaged in such behavior, and that's not reflective of who I am.
Well, I'm happy to hear that not all of the connections have been bad and that you've made some friends. Have there been
Yes.
any experiences where you said that some of the inmates maybe felt that you were a potential danger? Have you yourself ever felt like you were in danger because of another inmate?
I mean, I've had issues with certain inmates who, as soon as I got there, they grabbed me inappropriately, or I've had issues with inmates who have like misgendered me, and that's caused me to be, to feel very, you know, upset, when my pronouns are she, her, and then the person continues to call you he, even after you correct them. So, I mean, I've had these issues, but it's never been to the point where I felt unsafe there. But yet the department has used a lot of my advocacy or my write-ups to say, "Oh, you're not safe here in this prison." But in my eyes, none of it justifies housing me back in a facility where I'm 4 or 5 times more likely, according to Federal Bureau of Statistics, to be sexually assaulted, raped, or um, violently beat up. So, in my eyes, though, I feel as though the things that I went through there were just reflective of what any woman in prison goes through.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so at this point, you've been transferred out of the women's prison. As I understand it, you were in the middle of
You have
a
60
fight.
seconds remaining.
Ooh. Oh, you might have to wrap this up. Right. Okay, we're back. Um, what I wanted to ask when the call got erupted, I understand you are, or at least you were, in a fight with the Department of Corrections to be transferred back to the women's prison. What is going on with that right now?
So as of right now, I have finally submitted the final appeal to be returned to Edna Correctional Facility. I do doubt that it will go anywhere, and it's just because of the transphobic that exists and the politics that are at play. But what
Mm-hmm.
I tend to do is, sadly, what most of my transgender sisters in other states have had to do, which is take this whole issue to court. And you know, a lot of people say, well, are you just asking to go back to a female prison for better treatment? And to me, it's like I don't see myself as being anything else than a female. So I can't see being in a male facility where um, I'm wearing a bra or I'm wearing makeup, and out of 900 inmates, I'm the only one who's walking around with such on. Um, so this fight is just deeper than me just asking to go to a female prison. It's me asking for safety and begging not to be raped or abused again, such as how I have been while in the adult prison system. So as of right now, I'm just preparing more litigation and preparing to seek a judge's order, not just for the prison transfer, but possibly also to force the department to finally provide me with the surgery that they are supposed to provide me with.
Got it. I understand. So, uh, if it goes to court, what happens then?
If it goes to court, I can petition for something called a TRO, which is a temporary restraining order, which would actually restrain the prison from housing me in male facilities until the conclusion of that case. So I'm able to ask for injunctive relief. But me and another attorney are really trying to negotiate with DOC and see what options are on the table. But again, because of the publicized pregnancies and things, it sadly is it's going to be an uphill fight. And I tell people all the time that when all of this happened, I take accountability and I acknowledge the wrongness in what happened. But at the same time, I have to also accept the fact that what DOC is doing right now is an attack on the transgender community. It's not an attack on Demi Minor. It's an attack on the transgender community. And if I allowed them to continue on with this, there's the fact that other transgender women who are seeking safety may also be um, denied that opportunity to be given safety.
I think you're totally right about that. I think it definitely sets a precedent for how to treat transgender people, and not just an individual case.
Yes,
Well, I hope all of that goes well, and I hope well, I mean, I hope it doesn't have to go to the court, but if it does, I hope they rule in your favor. Um,
absolutely. And I just want to say, too, it's just a pleasure to be able to speak with people like yourself, but it's also a pleasure to have that support from not just in the United States, but I've gotten emails from all around the country where people are reading the story and, they acknowledge not everybody is perfect, but at the same time, you don't just throw somebody to the wolves. And sadly, me as a former foster child, I know what it's like to be given up on. I know what it's like to be unsafe. And most likely, I mean, not most likely, but now that I'm going to be a soon-to-be parent of a baby girl, it's like it's even more important to me to set the precedence, not just for myself, but the goal of justicefordemi.org is to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, is to give people a view or a glimpse into what prison life is like for those who are gender nonconforming or LGBTQI. So it's a blessing to be able to speak with you and do this interview.
Absolutely. I think what you're doing is really brave, and not everybody is willing to put themselves out there like that. Um, the final question I wanted to ask you is just is there anything else that you wanted to say that I didn't ask you about? Anything that you want the world to know?
Um, no, I mean, I guess just that, the fight continues, but I mean, the most thing I can keep pushing on is that we have to fight for the for issues like this to be legislated, for our local leaders to get involved. I mean, the sad fact is, all around the country, from a recent precedent that we have, transgender rights are under attack, and time to advocate is now. So I know everybody wonders why this case is so publicized, but it's publicized because behind it, there are politics that are at play, and there's a million reasons that they're looking for to say that transgenders are not worthy of equality. But yet each day we wake up and that's what we're forced to fight for is equality. So, I mean, it'd be nice to just be appreciated for just being us, but sadly we grow up having to, advocate. So I just can continue to say that, that what the department is doing right now is truly unfortunate, but it's also very, very dangerous, and it sets a precedence on their disregard for LGBTQI inmates.
All right. Well, thank you for standing up to it, and thank you for fighting, and thank you for speaking with me about it. Um, yeah, uh, that's all we had to ask. So I guess,
All right.
you know,
All right, it's
oh,
a blessing to talk to you, and like I said, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And continue, I'll continue to if we ever want to do this again, I'll continue to be available for via the Justice for Demi platform.
all right. We'll
All
be
right,
in
thank
touch
you.
with you, and all power to the people.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
All right. And that was Demi Minor. If you would like to read more about her fight against the prison system, you can go to justicefordemi.org. That's for the number four and not the word for, justicefordemi.org.